I can explain.
Happy Halloween, Bean Battalion. I hope everyone's rewatching spooky movies which traumatized their childhood, including Monster House.
That's right. Today's movie is unlike no other. And every other spooky movie wishes it could be this terrifying. Yeah, like Psycho, forget about it. Norman Bates wasn't the one who petrified her, it was Monster House. The kids in It weren't watching Pennywise in the projector, they were watching Monster House. In fact, Monster House was the reason everyone in Bird Box kept their eyes shut. And the fact that Monster House is an animated movie that's marketed as a kids PG movie is the biggest Chad move ever. I can't even imagine all the kids who saw this in theaters and had nightmares for weeks. 2006 must have just been a different time because, in general, most kids movies nowadays just slap that PG rating on it to make it more edgy or whatever. Like, why is Planes PG while Cars is just G? Are Planes considered more edgy than Cars? Will Boats be PG-13? But Monster House uses the rating to its full advantage. Not since Temple of Doom has a movie pushed the PG rating to its absolute limit, which I guess is just a staple for Steven Spielberg, clearly.
But I'm serious, some of the scenes in Monster House are genuinely terrifying.
And YouTube still believes that it's made for kids.
Dude, put that thing away! They're like children here!
Directed by Gil Keenan, Monster House is a horrifying social experiment that did okay at the box office and got okay reviews. So the fact that I'm still calling it underrated, even if the movie didn't completely flop, just tells you everything you need to know about how good it is. I mean, it's the best thing since canned bread. Back when I saw Monster House as an innocent child who didn't know how taxes work, all I saw was how terrifying it was. But rewatching it now as a grown-up 17-year-old man who still doesn't know how taxes work, I can tell you this film is so much more deep than I ever could have anticipated. And it fits perfectly in with the trinity of things that have layers. Onions have layers, ogres have layers, Monster House has layers.
But before we can get into that, we have to talk about the thing that this movie is arguably best known for. Well, apart from Chowder.
We have to talk about the animation and style.
Literally, where do I even begin with this? This is some of the most unique animation I've ever seen.
Even from the beginning, with how the camera focuses on a warm-colored leaf as a child rides their tricycle, until getting juxtaposed with the eerie house. In fact, this entire opening scene is probably one of the most overlooked opening scenes in spooky movies. Everyone knows the opening of Scream is fantastic, everyone knows the opening of Jaws is fantastic, but not enough people know how fantastic the opening of Monster House is. Now, I will agree that the facial animations in this movie are, well, yikes. And the way the characters move sometimes feels a little stiff, although I think that all adds to the creepy factor. Apparently, this movie was filmed in the same style that the Polar Express was filmed in, but while that was trying to be a whimsical adventure that turned into, well, here, the creepy animation works in its favor.
Although, really, who cares about how good the humans look?
Because in terms of animation, they're really not the stars of the show. In Monster House, the true star is the house. And wow, they knocked it out of the park. The animation for the house is easily the most impressive animation in the movie, and is, both literally and figuratively, alive. The way it all crushes together and reveals its razor-sharp teeth when it captures its prey is so smooth. And it's even smoother when it turns back into a normal house anytime adults are nearby. But even when it's not trying to constantly eat people, it still looks beautiful in an eerie way. It doesn't even have to come alive to be creepy, as it just stands there, menacingly. Also, this entire scene just screams it.
But look, I knew going into this rewatch of Monster House that this movie would be terrifying. That didn't surprise me.
But what did surprise me was how much more there was to it. Not only is this a horrifying movie that traumatized my childhood, but it's also an incredibly deep, emotional, and mature story that everyone needs to hear. Since this movie is so unique and layered, I can't get into those deeper themes without giving you a basic rundown of the plot. Okay, here we go. So Monster House revolves around a duo of friends, DJ and Chowder. Although DJ and Chowder remind me so much of Greg and Raleigh that I'm just gonna call them Greg and Raleigh. Okay, so Greg and Raleigh are suspicious of an ominous house across the street from Greg's house, and have been spying on it for a while. With Greg's parents gone on a trip, a controlling babysitter, Vicky style, is taking care of him. When the duo saves a girl from a prestigious school from the house's iron grip and realizes others are going missing, the trio must come together and find a way to stop the house before it eats countless trick-or-treaters on Halloween night. And a very important part which sets this plot above many other spooky movies like it, as cringy as it may sound, is that the children are not just dealing with monsters, but their own puberty and tribulations of growing up. potentially jeopardizing their childhood friendships.
Typically with these movie reviews where I'm constantly out of order in the plot, I'll tend to go from least important to most important in terms of characters.
And while that's still somewhat the case, as you'll see later on, almost everything in the movie revolves around the main character, Greg. So that's where we'll start. Whereas most horror movie characters are either stereotypes or just act as random people set up to die so they can show off how cool the kills are, Greg in Monster House is an actual character with actual goals and an actual arc. I know, it's
heresy, my friend.
Greg starts off the movie very flustered with his own self. Not only is he worried about keeping tabs on the creepy house across the street, but he wants to be treated like an adult. Even from when he first speaks to his family and gets made fun of for having a voice crack, you can see how much it affects him. Because to him, being an adult is the only way to be taken seriously.
And being taken seriously is a goal we see throughout the entire movie.
But then we see Rowley, his best friend, and Rowley couldn't be more different from Greg. Instead of worrying about being an adult, all he's excited about is Halloween coming up. Although Greg shuts him down, saying that maybe he's getting too old for trick-or-treating. And by the way, can I just say how much of an icon Rowley is in this movie? Even though this movie is terrifying, he provides some great comic relief throughout the entire thing.
I'm a murderer. No, you're not. When it's an accident, they call it manslaughter.
In fact, this whole movie is very well written, not only in the drama, but in the witty dialogue mixed throughout. Then Greg's babysitter, Z, comes, who reminds me so much of Jade from Victorious that I'm just gonna call her Jade from Victorious. So Jade is immediately controlling over him until he once again stands up for himself, claiming that he is practically an adult. I mean, seriously, even from the first few opening scenes, you can tell how every little thing has a purpose that forwards the story in arcs. Even in the way Greg dresses has a story to it. It's blue and red, which are the same colors as the innocent Rowley, while mixing in black stripes, which are the colors of Jade and her adult, confident side that he aspires to be. Things only get worse for Greg when Jade's boyfriend comes. Not this one. He looks so much like the fake Rogic, but since he's the fake one and not the king himself, I'll just call him by his name in the movie, Bones. So Bones makes fun of Greg for being a scared kid, and once again, Greg tries to prove to everyone that he is an adult. But both of those rebellious characters represent everything he wants to be viewed as, an adult.
Even if you can't see that being an adult and being mature aren't the same thing.
Rowley continues to live his childhood to the fullest until a certain character comes around and causes a rift between them. Jenny. And for the first time today, she doesn't really look like anyone in particular, so I'll just call her by her name. Okay, moving on. Not only is the entire love triangle we have going on here funny and adds so much humor to the otherwise terrifying and heartbreaking story, which by the way, we haven't even gotten to that yet, but it so effortlessly creates tension between Greg and Rowley. Now, none of them want to own up to all of the weird friend things they do, and they both quickly agree with her on things, even if it contradicts what they literally just said. Like when Jenny says she doesn't like Mexican food, both of them are quick to agree, and then interrogate each other later on why they did so. And this part here is just hilarious.
I don't want to die.
I say it's worth a shot.
Yes, I agree. Let's do it.
Jenny herself is a really interesting character with a lot of personality, and a lot of it even though she comes from such a different background. Being a prestigious girls' school, she's still allies with Greg and Rowley over one similarity. They're the only ones who understand and believe what's going on at the monster house. Which, sometimes it gets a little crazy how the adults don't see the house coming alive, because I mean, come on, how did you not see that? It was right there. But for the most part, it honestly makes sense. One element this movie plays up so perfectly is a sense of mystery and the fear of the unknown. You don't know what's going on for a good while. If you didn't watch any trailers before seeing the movie, you would have no idea the house was alive. For quite a bit of time, all we know is that Nevercracker values his privacy to an insane degree. He steals a bunch of random objects, and that there are a few hints here and there that show it's hard for him to be let go. When Bones talks to Jade about how Nevercracker took his kite a long time ago, it's a perfect gather around the campfire spooky story, and it perfectly sets up the it-ish scene I talked about earlier, which just then lets completely loose and finally shows the true power of the monster house. It honestly left me in shock. Then comes an oblivious duo of cops, played by Kevin James and Nick Cannon of all people. They add some very much needed humor in the scene, and once again, they're adults who don't see the same things the kids see. After some awesome haunted house-esque intense scenes, and the reveal of the most emotional scene in the movie, which we'll get to here soon, the story ends in an epic final battle with something so incredibly powerful. I mean, I know I make this joke a lot, and for the sake of respect, I'll call him by his real name, but Chowder controlling a bulldozer is the only thing on Earth capable of defeating Thanos.
I mean, tell me you wouldn't be terrified if he came charging at you like this.
And even after getting a kiss from Jenny and trying to be taken seriously as an adult for the entire movie, Greg ends the movie deciding to go trick-or-treating with Riley, showing that he's comfortable with himself and wants to be a child just a little longer after everything that happened. It's really the best ending we could have gotten, and a great arc for Greg.
However, as mature and good as this arc was, especially for a scary movie, there is still so much more to talk about, and something so much more emotional.
It's time to talk about the tragic life of Nebuchadnezzar and Constance the Giantess. First of all, Nebuchadnezzar, played by Steve Buscemi of all people, is so good in this movie. In one moment, he's absolutely terrifying, and in another, you can't help but feel sorry for him. Although, he only starts really getting layers when the soul of the house is revealed. The flashback of Constance the Giantess is one of the most emotional sequences in any scary movie. Even though she was enslaved her whole life in a circus and treated like an attraction for the public eye, Nebuchadnezzar still saw the good in her and loved her for who she was. And the fact that she dies the exact same way and reason she hated most about people is just heartbreaking. It then makes even more sense about why Nebuchadnezzar was so protective of his house, and even more emotional when he sees the danger she's causing and has to let her go. They really just put an incredibly deep, Romeo and Juliet-esque tragic love story in the core of this seemingly simple, spooky movie.
If any of you right now have already picked out scary movies to watch on Halloween night, well, forget about them. Watch Monster House instead.
I'm not even kidding. Monster House is unironically one of the best spooky movies of all time. It's a perfect mix of genuine horror and dark, subtle humor. The animation creates an unsettling atmosphere whether it was intentional or not, and it even packs in a great amount of depth and emotion. I know this movie isn't completely forgotten by society like some of the other masterpieces I've reviewed, but I think it's still definitely underrated and deserves to have a seat next to the all-time spooky greats.
So, yeah, that's about it. For anyone trick-or-treating on Halloween night, remember this. If you see a spooky house you think is alive, just call up Chowder and his bulldozer. He'll take care of it pretty quickly.